Hey everyone, so I guess you've already heard. Recently, Mark Carney went over to China and he came back with a huge trade agreement between the two countries. I don't know that anyone ever actually expected this when he went over. We probably just expected that they were going to have some talks or whatever and they were going to continue on discussions at a later date, but that's not what happened. He came back with a major announcement. Canada and China have announced a major new trade agreement that reduces tariffs, expands market access for Canadians into China, and removes tourist visa requirements between the two countries. This is absolutely huge. And I can't overemphasize how big of an impact this is going to have on the Canadian economy that is needed to diversify our economy for decades now. And government after government has just not done that. This deal impacts several key sectors of the Canadian economy, including electric vehicles, agriculture, of course, seafood, lumber, and energy, and is being described by industry leaders as one of the most significant trade developments. Now, of course, the concessions that the Canadians or that we had to make to China, they were obviously really upset that we had put 100% tariff on their electric vehicles at the request of the Americans, by the way, basically a favor to them to help out their auto industry. But one of the most notable components of the deal, obviously, is the tariffs on the Chinese electric vehicles entering Canada. For Canadian consumers, this is expected to lead to basically greater availability and lower prices in the EV market. Industry analysts have said that the increased competition could make electric vehicles more accessible to middle income households. So those people that were not able to purchase just because they were so expensive, some of these other EVs that were around, Teslas or whatnot, now are, there's a very good chance that they might be able to actually afford some of these electric vehicles. And with being able to do so, this is going to accelerate the adoption of Canadians into the EV market. It's going to allow them to have more choice at a time when fuel prices and costs of living pressure remains high. And lower priced EVs, of course, reduce long-term transportation costs, maintenance costs, and charging expenses, while all at the same time supporting Canada's broader emission reduction goals. It's kind of a win-win. Officials emphasize that this portion of the agreement focuses on affordability and consumer access for Canadians rather than mandate. Now, in return, this is huge news for Canada. China has agreed to reduce tariffs on Canadian agricultural exports, including things like canola, which is one of Canada's most valuable crops. The announcement was welcomed by Prairie leaders, both Daniel Smith and Scott Moe, who he himself said the agreement restores critical access to a major global market for Canadian farmers. Now, in response to this, agricultural groups have said that the exports are going to result in several things, including a much higher demand for Canadian product, more stable pricing for the farmers, and increased investment into these rural areas that are producing these crops. China remains obviously one of the world's largest food importers. I mean, how many people do they have there? They are one of the world's largest, if not the world's largest food importer, making improved access particularly significant for Canadian farming. Now, I just wanted to show you a little article here. This was from a few months ago as a result of the huge trade war between China and the US and the terrible impact tariffs have had on the American economy. Just a few months ago, it was shown that the American hardwood lumber industry took a massive hit. They were typically exporting about $2 billion annually. And you can see by this article here that in 12 months since tariffs on US hardwood were announced on July of last year, lumber exports to China were down by 615 million compared to the previous year. So you can understand that this was very important that Mark Carney included this as part of the deal and went to China, and in order to try and make the deal, showed them, hey, listen, we can provide you the hardwood that you are now missing from China. And we kind of swooped in and made the sale with China and took advantage of the fact that China and US are having these trade issues, and we've turned that into a positive for Canada. Now, with the significant increase in tourism organizations are saying that the move can generate a substantial amount of economic activity, particularly in major cities where there's lots of popular tourist regions and destinations for people to go and see. I know Vancouver's a really popular tourist location. The Rocky Mountains. There's lots of places that these new tourists are going to want to see, and it's going to really help strengthen our economy. Now we get to energy export, and we all know how much energy and oil China consumes. With this deal, China has also committed to increase purchases of Canadian oil. This further diversifies Canada's energy exports. Now, what this is going to do, of course, is it's going to reduce Canada's dependence on single market exports and will strengthen Canada's position as a reliable global supplier. Now, imagine how important that is for the energy sector here in Canada. The agreement is expected to support investment and long-term planning within Canada's energy sector, particularly during a period of global supply uncertainty. And you can only imagine how important this might be when deciding whether or not another pipeline should be built to the Pacific coast. With all this extra oil needing to be shipped, it makes it much more viable to build that pipeline. Now, I don't know about you, but I love going on vacation. I love tourism and travel. That's one thing that I really enjoy. And one of the other pieces with this deal is it includes the removal of tourist visa requirements between Canada and China. This removal of the tourist visa requirements between the two countries, officials basically expect that you're going to see a significant increase in travel between the two countries. This will benefit pretty much everyone. It benefits airlines, hotels, restaurants, tourism operators. We'll see a significant increase in tourism back and forth between the two countries. I've never been to China, would definitely like to go. And I know Chinese, they love traveling themselves, so we should probably see a significant increase to the number of people that are visiting from China. Anyways, I just wanted to bring this up. There's so much that this trade deal offers to Canada. I think it's going to be an absolutely huge boon to our economy. A lot of our sectors are really suffering because of this trade dispute that we had that we should never have gotten into in the first place. The Canadian-China trade agreement lowers tariffs. It opens markets that we didn't have access to for several years. It expands travel and touches nearly every major sector of the Canadian economy. What Canadians should expect from this, though, is they're going to have better options for EVs in the market. They're cheaper, they're better quality, and because they're cheaper, more people will have access to them, and it will allow them to save money, in which case they can spend more money in other areas of the economy. So supporters of the deal are going to say that it's going to offer lower costs for consumers, new opportunities for exporters, and increased economic stability. To be honest, we should have diversified our economy decades ago, but every government that's been in power has been lazy about doing that. We've just been reliant on selling all of our goods to the US when we shouldn't have been. Now we've been kind of put into a position where we have to do this. We are doing it, and in the long run, it's going to make us a lot more economically stronger than we are right now. There are critics of this deal, of course. One, for example, is the automotive industry, particularly Premier Ford in Ontario. He does not like the fact that we're allowing these electric vehicles into the country. However, the amount of vehicles that we're allowing in is only 49,000, and it slowly increases over the course of the next few years to about 70,000. But that is such a tiny, minuscule amount to the number of vehicles that are actually sold in Canada. I think it works out to about 3%. And if that's what it takes to get all the other benefits that we have in this deal, I think it's worth it. And besides, why should Canadians not have access to cheaper and far superior products to buy from? Like, why should I not be able to buy a far superior electric vehicle for cheaper than to buy the junk that's out there right now? It is a benefit to Canadians to be able to do this. It allows more Canadians to be able to afford an electric vehicle, which means it will help reduce the amount of that they're spending on transportation, maintenance, etc., that they didn't have access to before with some of these higher priced electric vehicles. So I think this is a win-win, and with the money that they're saving, they can then spend that in other areas of the economy as well and help boost that up as well. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. I do plan on coming out with a lot of new content, fairly new to posting my thoughts on not only just Canadian politics, but also news and other events that happen around the world. If you'd like to hear more, or subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.